The Entrepreneur's Library, episode 106.
Welcome to the Entrepreneur's Library, the only book-centric podcast that reviews all the top-selling business books and shares authors' perspective firsthand. This is your resource to finding the next great book that will enable you to grow personally and professionally. Welcome your host, Wade Danielson.
Thank you for joining us on the EL. Today we have Chris Edmonds, author of The Culture Engine, a framework for driving results, inspiring your employees, and transforming your workplace. Welcome, Chris, and thank you for joining us on the Entrepreneur's Library.
Wade, thanks very much for the opportunity.
Absolutely. Before we get started, before we take a deep dive into your book, will you take just a moment to introduce yourself and tell us just a little bit about you personally?
Absolutely. I'm a speaker, obviously, and I'm an author. I write things. I'm a blogger. I'm a podcaster. I'm also what I call an executive consultant. So I do executive coaching, usually to help leaders align their corporate cultures to kind of serve everyone better, both customers and the leaders, as well as obviously the employees there. I've also been affiliated with the Ken Blanchard companies now for almost 20 years as a senior consultant there. So a couple of balls in the air there.
Very good. Thank you for sharing that. Now, let's jump right into your book, The Culture Engine, which was just made available for purchase not too long ago, September 29th, 2014. And Chris, we're going to move quickly, but we're here to cover the top questions that our listener/reader would like to get answered. And the first one is, what was the inspiration behind writing The Culture Engine?
Great question, and it's really kind of the core driver of my passions and my work with clients over the past 25 years. I've done a lot of work around facilitating skill building and in essence consulting to leadership teams, and the core opportunities are often that the culture that they exist in, that the business operates in, doesn't support those new skills. It doesn't support those new desires. And so I've kind of viewed from afar to think, I love that you're paying me to do this, but it's not going to stick. There's not going to be the kind of embracing of these new behaviors or these new concepts or these new processes. And so when I started 15 years ago, very proactively in doing consulting around creating a more intentional culture, and we'll talk about the elements of that here in a little bit, what I found was, number one, it was way more gratifying for the clients, way more gratifying for me, if I can be selfish, because it was fun, because people began to actually craft workplaces that were safer, that were more fun, that were based upon trust and respect day in and day out. That was my primary inspiration behind putting these proven practices, these proven steps into book form.
Excellent. So there's a ton of books that come out every single day. So this next question is very important. It's what makes your book different from others regarding the same or similar topic?
Yeah. Somebody asked me, gee, there's a bunch of culture books on the shelf. Why did you add another one? Well, okay then. The reality is that organizations still aren't very nice places to operate in. They're not very fun places to work in, not consistently. And so despite some brilliant ideas, some wonderful guidance from management gurus, I work with Ken Blanchard, who's one of the top 10, I'd say. There's a great deal of information available, accessible to leaders, but for whatever reasons, they're not moving. They're not embracing it. And so what I realized the opportunity that I had was I had basically taken a skill set and built it in senior leaders. My experience is that senior leaders have rarely been asked to lead a culture change, and they may never have actually even observed one that worked. So I'm actually trying to craft a step-by-step practical framework that anybody can do at the team level, at the department level, all the way to a global organization. I'm working with a couple of those now, a little more complex globally. But the reality is that this framework and these steps have worked exceptionally well for clients in all kinds of different industries. Now, it takes a while, but the biggest differentiator is I tell you how. And these are proven practices. And what you'll find as you look at the book, there's actually worksheets. I make you write. I make you actually go through some thinking and some pondering and some crafting of some of these pieces. So the book is actually a step-by-step guide. That's pretty different.
So based on how you just broke it down as a guide, I like to ask, how do you suggest the reader engage with your book? And is this a book they can jump in and out of? Or is this one they should really start from the beginning and read all the way through?
Yeah, great question. My recommendation is go right through chapter by chapter, all the way through to the end. Now, there's a wonderful opportunity for doing some testing of some of these ideas and giving some space. Culture change at the team level is a lot easier than it is at a global, multinational organization level. But I'll give you some hints as I go through, and I love the opportunity to look at each of the chapters, kind of why they're built, how they build on each other. I will speak to that. But my belief is as you get involved in some of the ideas, and as I kind of push you into a corner to say, if this is the way your organization's operating now, that's not good. It's not fun. So if you're willing to engage for 18 months, for 24 months, then this book can actually help you craft a much more safe, inspiring organization. There's lots of benefits as well. But my belief is if you're going to be interested in this and you'll get hooked by this, you'll probably be much more apt to stay with it and to try these things over time.
So, Chris, you just alluded to taking us through the book, and that's the part that we're to now, which is actually my favorite part. And I want to ask you to take the next 5 to 10 minutes and really lay out for our reader/listener what they can expect out of your book. Will you do that for us?
Absolutely so. And again, I appreciate the opportunity. The book is it's hardcover, and it's published by Wiley, and it's got a very attractive cover on it. The cover image is, of course, of a big V8 engine and a nice line drawing. But everyone asks, so culture engine, what does that really mean? The culture that your team operates in, that your division operates in, that your plant operates in, your company operates in, basically is in charge of. It basically causes everything good to happen, everything lousy to happen. Culture drives everything that happens in your organization. So I'm going to throw a key idea, and it's the foundation of chapter 1. And the foundational idea about the culture engine is that you need an organizational constitution. So the title of chapter 1 is, what is an organizational constitution and why do you need one? I love that terminology, organizational constitution. Most folks around the planet can nod their heads to that. It's like, okay, I kind of get an idea, even without knowing more about it, that what you're really looking to do is to craft some agreements, some formal agreements that are going to be maybe different rules. And they're going to be rules that everyone is going to be required to follow, and that's exactly the case. The idea of an organizational constitution, and you're going to find some of the elements are built into the ensuing chapters, but an organizational constitution allows you to craft and formalize your team's reason for being, its purpose. What do you do? For whom? And to what end? It's not about making money, although that's a nice benefit, but it's about who you're serving and why should they care? Why should they be attracted to product services that your team provides? That's the first piece. The second piece is about values. And the values piece is probably the biggest shift, and it's the biggest, most important foundation. And it's about making values and how it is that we agree to treat each other within our organization, as well as to customers and potential customers, and even to suppliers, vendors, partners. Everyone gets treated kindly. What a surprise. We're going to actually formalize nice in the form of behaviorally defined values. So I see organizations do rather lofty, rather vague references to what they want are behaviors in their organizations, but they rarely are as disciplined as to define them in behavioral terms and then measure them regularly, which I'll speak to in a bit. Third piece is strategies. From a standpoint of what the market is looking for, what your customers need, strategies need to be crystal clear and very well understood. And the last element of an organizational constitution is goals. So what we basically do is we hit the important piece, which everyone is monitoring and measuring and working towards, which is that consistent performance. But it's also now about values and treating people nicely and keeping your promises, which is hugely, hugely important. So that first chapter really sets the standard of what an organizational constitution is. I describe some of the client impact. I'd like to close this discussion about the first chapter here with some of those consistent metrics. What we found in 18 months to 24 months, our culture clients consistently see 40% gains in their employees' engagement. Vitally, vitally important and very powerful. Second thing they see is once you have engaged employees, they treat customers better. So we see 40% gains in the customer experience. And lastly, and one of those things that gets measured pretty regularly, is profits. Profits and results, 30% gains there. Those are rather impressive numbers, and we've had very, very consistent results. So that's kind of the reason behind an organizational constitution. Chapter 2 actually allows the leader to do some reflecting, because the issue is that as you as a leader in your team, department, division, etc., choose to bring in this culture refinement process using an organizational constitution, the demands on you are going to be huge. You're going to have to change how you spend your time. You're going to have to change how you hang out. You're going to have to change how you interact with others. You're going to have to be a champion, a cheerleader, and a coach for those values. And if that leader and those leaders aren't able to really get clear on their own personal purpose, their own personal values and behaviors, and to clarify their leadership philosophy. How is it that I'm really wired to serve others? Those need to be the foundation of a decision to move forward. So chapter 2 gives you as the reader the chance to actually formalize your personal purpose, formalize your values and behaviors, and formalize your philosophy of leadership, and then present it. Formally present it. Ask people for their feedback, and obviously that feedback will continue ad nauseum through the rest of your career. But the intent is you've got to have your head on straight and your heart aligned to be able to do the very intense work that's going to be required to kind of coach effectively in this organizational culture change. Chapter 3 starts to begin with those first of the 4 elements of an organizational constitution, and it outlines how you clarify your organization's purpose. Part of the idea here is not just crafting a compelling, inspiring purpose statement, but also I go through a bit of a marketing instruction, because you're going to need to do a marketing campaign of some of these ideas within your own organizations. You know, what's our purpose? Why are we taking time to kind of formalize purpose? How is it different? So chapter 3 helps you, guides you, gives you examples to clarify your team or department or company's purpose statement. Chapter 4 is probably the meat of the organizational constitution, and it's about values, and it's about defining values in behavioral terms. And values are often, again, pretty lofty. A lot of organizations have them. Some even have them widely publicized. What is different here is to get them into observable, tangible, measurable behaviors for everyone. Leaders start first. They have to live them for those valued behaviors to have any credibility. And then they invite the rest of the organization to model them as well. There's also a piece where we have to, we're going to come back in chapter 6 and speak to how do you measure whether or not people are aligning to your behaviors in every interaction. Just as you measure performance traction and meeting commitments for customers, et cetera, we're going to craft the same kind of tool in chapter 6. So we'll come to that in a moment. Chapter 5 is probably the easiest of the elements when we combine the strategies and goals in chapter 5. I call them the easiest because there is a probably greater likelihood. There's many more organizations that are better, clearer about their performance expectations and about goals, possibly about strategies, not always, but those are typically much more clearer, and there's some systemic dashboards in place to measure those things as well. So I present a 5-point strategic planning wheel as part of chapter 5 to kind of have strategic planning be a common conversation, but that's typically a little bit easier a task for the leaders, for the readers to be able to develop. But there's also worksheets in Chapter 5 to help you formalize your strategies and goals. Chapter 6 is titled Your Organizational Constitution Must Be Lived. And that's the piece where you want to engage everyone in the implementation. You want to describe the way, model the way, and then align the way as you start to look at how people embrace your valued behaviors. I actually had a chance to speak to Gary Ridge, who is the president and CEO of WD-40, a company that I've been able to work with in the past through the Ken Blanchard companies. And they have a very interesting tribal culture at WD-40 that's very values aligned and used this process to craft that a number of years ago. In Chapter 7, there's a bit of a discussion about how do you gather feedback around valued behaviors? How do you craft a survey that will give you honest, valid feedback about the degree to which leaders and everyone else in the organization are living those valued behaviors? That's kind of the core piece. As we get into Chapter 8 and 9 and we start to look at some vitally important pieces. 8 is titled Dealing with Resistance. As you begin to engage people in a culture change like this, you're going to be screwing with power structures and political arrangements, cliques, etc. They're not going to be happy with you. So how can a leader address resistance and be steady, consistent with this change? Chapter 9 is about hiring. You put your culture at risk every time you hire a new leader or a new team player. So I outline how do you, before the hire, go through recruiting, interviewing, and assessing players to make sure that there's a culture fit, to make sure they actually are willing to embrace those values. And then, of course, there's an orientation and integration piece after they're hired. And if they don't fit, that's okay. They're wonderful people. They just may not be the right ones for your team, for your organization. Chapter 10 is kind of a bit of a, okay, now you've got a bunch of pieces together. What are you going to do? And it's about implementing the organizational constitution. And it's titled basically, Don't Leave Your Culture to Chance. We look at long-term alignment. Don't be hooked into the short-term results, thinking that Wall Street can drive, that you're really looking at getting very, very excited about aligning people's behavior to the values. The last piece in Chapter 10 is there's 5 questions in each of the 10 chapters, which include that wonderful Chapter 1 kickoff, What's an Organizational Constitution? And it basically is a 50-item culture effectiveness assessment. So in Chapter 10, the last thing you'll do is score your, in the book, handwrite, score, circle your answers from 1 to 6 on each of those questions, score your culture effectiveness assessment, which can give you a great, great feel for where you are now and what you need to do to move your organization forward.
So, Chris, you just went through a ton of great information, and that's what might make this next question a little bit difficult. And that we're asking if the reader can only take away one concept, principle, or action item out of everything you just discussed with us, everything in your book, what would you want that to be?
You know, the piece that's very fun about this is that by getting people clearer about values and having them hold values up as important as performance is the absolute switch. And if I get that switch in leaders' heads and in their hearts and in their hands, then they're going to be able to make the moves and basically inspire others to kind of charge along with them as the organization evolves a bit.
Very good. And do you have a favorite quote from your book?
I do. One of my old school executives that I worked with, and I coached this gentleman for a couple of years, and they did some great, great things in their organization. About a year and a half into our coaching, because typically the kickoff and kind of getting some of these pieces into places is actually about 10% of the work. 90% of it comes with the day-to-day alignment, and that's what I coach leaders to do. And about a year and a half in, he said, okay, I had an epiphany this week. And I said, okay, cool. I wondered what that noise was. I heard it from, 20 states away. And he said, I used to see my job as managing processes and results. And now I see my job as managing people's energy. And I thought, okay, I got him.
That's excellent. Very good. This next question we have to ask as all the people who are listening are book lovers. And that's, if there was only one book that you could recommend based on the way it's impacted your life, created a paradigm shift, what would you suggest?
There's a bunch. There's probably 20 I keep on my absolute visible shelf. If I had to pick one, I'd pick Ken Blanchard's Leading at a Higher Level. I was graced with being able to write the culture chapter in that book, not surprisingly. But I'm surrounded at Blanchard by really, really brilliant thinkers and researchers and effective consultants and thought leaders. And what that book really did for a number of folks that I've worked with, and it's opened doors to let us start to work with their organizations, it's about don't tolerate the way things are now. It's really about there's a variety of different ways. If you're in a teams environment, there's a way we can help give you some skills to manage teams differently. If you want a self-directed work teams kind of approach, you may want people to be more proactive about managing their own kind of development. How do you do that? So there's just a number of proven tools in that book that I think is probably, and it's a bit of a compendium. So there's a bunch of ideas in that one. And again, was thrilled to write the culture chapter there.
Chris, before we depart, can you recommend the best way for our listeners to get more information on you and your book, The Culture Engine?
Absolutely. You can go to drivingresultsthroughculture.com. That's my main website, and it's where I blog every week, and I've got podcasts every week. They can also look at thecultureengine.com. That's thecultureengine.com. Get a free sample chapter of the Culture Engine and learn a little bit more about it and make a decision about whether or not they'd love to invest some time and energy in this process. And lastly, I'm very active on social media. I'm SC Edmonds, Stephen Christopher, SC Edmonds on Twitter. I would love to interact with people there.
Thank you for sharing those, Chris, and thank you for sharing your book with us today.
Absolutely. Appreciate the opportunity, Wade. I'm so excited about getting this into the hands of entrepreneurs.
Thanks again for listening in today. If you would like more information on Chris or his book, The Culture Engine, just visit the elpodcast.com. And if you'd like to become a VIP, you'll also have access to win his book.
Looking for your next book idea? Head over to the elpodcast.com, where Wade shares his amazing resource, the top 10 business books recommended by over 500 entrepreneurs, with you for free. That's the elpodcast.com. Till the next time, keep it on the EL.